Let me bring in my guest for this hour. Joining me is criminal defense attorney David Bruno. David, great to see you again. Thank you so much for being on the show with me tonight. I don't even know where to start. I thought what Kirby had to say was fascinating, but let me start off by getting your feelings about the opening statement, what he might have done right and what he might have done wrong.
Sure. I think, well, first off, to humanize a defendant is the #1 thing you want to do in front of a jury. You want to put a side to them that is inconsistent with what the state's theory of the case is, that this was an intentional act, that he is a monster, that he set out to kill all of these people at the parade. And what he did with the tears and the emotion that he was able to show, because he represents himself, is that he did that in part. But the problem is that he has no other defense. I mean, essentially, if he's going to say this wasn't intentional, he doesn't have the experts to say that there was a defect in the car. He doesn't have the mental health experts to say that there's a disease or defect in the mind that prohibited from him coming to the purpose of intent. So the crocodile tears up would have been good if it was an effective defense that he had to also talk about, in addition to showing who he was as a person.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree with all those things. Now, I want to turn now to what some of the things that Nick Kirby had to say. Took the stand today, talked a lot, and I think in a couple of sentences, this guy summed up what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, like why is Darrell Brooks doing this? And he said something, man, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. He said, it's the criminal mind. And this guy, he's had some issues with police, so he kind of knows what's going on. He says, it's an attempt by Darrell Brooks to knock some time off. Anytime you can spend time outside of your cell, your 5x7 as they call it, that's great. And then he said, also, it's to take advantage of every little thing you can. And now we know he wants to call Erica Patterson. He's probably going to keep her up there. He said today, I know she's going to be up there more than 35 minutes. He probably wants to make her suffer a little bit. Your thoughts on the comments by Nick Kirby?
That's an interesting perspective. In the end, this man's going down. He's going to be found guilty.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter how many credits he gets in the county jail versus the state prison, that he's going to do his time the rest of his life. So potentially, maybe he enjoys where he is versus where he's going. That's one thing. You know, one of my big takeaways, Michael, is that comment that Kirby said to this defendant right before he drove that car into the parade. And he said that you're not welcome here. This is not your place. You don't fit in here. And he said that, he didn't mean it by racially, it wasn't a racial statement. It's just that you're not the type of person that this community, you fit in. And I'll tell you what, I've never been told anything like that. And I can only imagine what Mr. Brooks told that. And his actions after that, receiving the comment like that, was to go and drive through a parade in the same community that he told he was not welcome in. I wonder if that was the trigger that set this man off.
I think there were two triggers, and I think you're exactly right on that. I think that upset him. I thought the issue with Erica Patterson upset him, and I bet you in his warped mind, David, he believes they are at fault. You heard Nick Kirby, it kind of broke my heart a little bit, where he says he feels responsible for all this, and he wouldn't mind if all the victims put all their anger on him. But I bet you, in his mind, he believes that the reason he went off and did this was because of Erica Patterson making him mad, and this guy telling him that. I would not be surprised at all. And that may even be his defense, because in his mind, he might think that that's a valid reason.
I still don't think that this man has it all together in his mind to begin with, right? And the way that he reacts to things, both right there with Kirby and Patterson, as well as the back and forth with the judge, the subject matter jurisdiction, the jurisdictional attacks, and his constant objections about him not being Darrell Brooks. I mean, in the end, and we know, and you talked about this in the last block, that initially the attorneys were seeking out a psychiatric defense for this man. And now he's representing himself. There's nobody looking over his shoulder. There's no counsel on the side of him making sure he's doing the right things. And it's only Mr. Brooks and what's going on in his mind that really knows why he's doing certain things. And I question whether or not he's got it all together, given the conduct we've seen in this courtroom.
Yeah, fair enough. And a quick note before we go to break, folks, if he's able to convince this jury somehow that it wasn't intentional, it makes a big difference. That first-degree intentional murder carries life in prison. The second-degree murder, which would be non-intentional, non-premeditated, it's up to 60 years. So there is something there for them to work with. And I think, again, as a good attorney, that will be the area they would be trying to focus on. All right, David, stand by. I do want to take a quick break.
On.
All right, Chanley Painter, thank you so much for your report. Truly appreciate it. As always, I'll let you go now. Let me bring in my guest.